Welcome to Etowah Valley Historical Society's Oral Project. Today is November the 9th, 2008. I'm Herschel Weisbrom. Our subject today is Thomas Momo Champion, whose father co-founded the Gilreath Champion Drugstore on Main Street, where Thomas was a pharmacist and manager for many years. Thomas is a lifelong resident of Cartersville, beloved by many of our citizens. Copies of this DVD are available for research purposes at the Etowah Valley Historical Society's office, the Bartow History Center, and the Cartersville Bartow Public Library. And now we'll get to the interview. Thomas, you were born here in Cartersville.
I was born in Cartersville.
And give us the year.
April the 28th, 1923.
So you're a 1923 model.
Uh-huh.
Tell us about growing up in Cartersville and many of those people you grew up with. A few still survive, and many survived until just the last few years. Who were your good friends?
Well, we were a great neighborhood. It was a time of neighborhoods. And it was a neighborhood, and in our neighborhood, we had, next door, we had John Fleetwood's family on the east side of us, and the Shaw family, the Albert Shaw family, on the west side of us.
And the Cole family just down the
The
street?
Cole family right down the street. And the Lyris family, Harry Lyris, father and mother. And the neighborhood consisted of about 3 or 4 blocks. We had Jimmy Neal and Bill Neal, and a lot of people knew them. And
had the Dellinger family.
We had the Dellinger family right up the street, down Bartow Street on us. And then we had
the Knight family.
The Knight family, and the Jimmy Shaw family was participated in that neighborhood, and the Upshur family. And
what about Evans family?
The Cole family, Dargan Cole family, were raised right up the street.
Now, Evans Strickland.
And Evans Strickland lived across the street, and there was a Bishop family that lived there, and he had been with the railroad, and he sold railroad engines over in Europe.
Now, you, a lot of those people we have mentioned, they had children your age.
Oh, yes. And we all congregated and played together, and it was really a neighborhood of children.
Now, tell us where the home was located.
The home was located on the corner of Bartow. I was raised after I was 6 years old. We lived on Cherokee Avenue with my grandmother, who had a boarding house, till I was 6 years old. And when my sister was born, Daddy said he couldn't go around raising another child around my grandmother because she worried about him so much. And I aggravated him. And so he bought the house 4 doors up the street. But we still ate our meals with grandmother at boarding house.
Now, that was your maternal grandfather had lived there. Your grandmother is Mrs. Hebel.
Yeah, that's right.
How did she come to be in Cartersville?
Well, my grandfather came, and I can't remember, it was either Gadsden or one of those little towns right over in the edge of, name those 3 little towns over in the edge.
Well, there's Anniston, Piedmont, Jacksonville.
Piedmont. It was either Gadsden or Piedmont, and he was a miner over there, and he came over here, and like other miners, I know Mr. Weinman, and another one of the miners that came here about the same time. And they saw it down in Altoona Pass, the ore, where the railroad had been cut. And they all came here about the same time. And they all sort of cooperated, you know. And My granddaddy died from falling in a test hole. He got pneumonia and died from that.
Was he a relatively young man at the time?
Well, he was in his, I would say he was in, let's see, I was born in 23, and he died in 22. And he fell in a test hole and took pneumonia and died. And grandmother, Mr. Wyman, helped grandmother buy this house, two-story house. And she had about 6 or 8 boarders that stayed there with them. She fed them breakfast and supper, and she raised her family and sent till they were grown, and 2 of them graduated from college.
Now, Sarah Hebel, a lot of people will remember her living here. That was your...
She was young.
Mm-hmm.
She was Mr. Mac Young's brother.
Okay.
Wife, daughter. And she had a brother, Hayward, and,
Those were your cousins?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, what about your father's family?
My father's family, my daddy was raised up up around Plainville, Georgia. And times got bad, and the farmers were having trouble selling the crops for anything, and they opened a co-op up in Calhoun, Gordon County, and he took it over. He was raised out on the Oostenaula River, where the steamboats used to come up, and they would come up to Rome and deliver the stuff, and then they'd go on up to Plainville, and there was a big place in the river where they could turn around. And I think I found the house one time, but I never did go by.
Now, what brought your father to Cartersville?
I would say probably Mr. Gilreath.
And how did he know Mr. Gilreath, and how did your father learn his trade?
He learned it by working he went to a school in Macon. Macon had a pharmacy school then, and he went down to Macon to learn.
Was this during the time period World War I or shortly thereafter?
Well, yes, because right after he was bought the store, he had to go into service. He went into the Navy, and he was a corpsman with the Navy up at Paris Island with the Marines. And he was discharged from there in 28 to 29, right after the war ended.
That would be 18 or 19.
Yeah, 18 or 19.
Yeah, 1918. And so he had this pharmacy degree, and Mr. Gilreath was looking for someone to help him.
Somebody to help him open another store. And he remained a partner till I got in it, and then we were able to buy him out.
So it was originally Gilreath Champion Drugstore.
That's right.
It was on Main Street.
Yeah.
The what is referred to as Bull Neck. Now, what is Bull Neck?
Bull Neck, there was a livery stable right up the street from where the Bartow Herald used to be. And you remember the Bartow Herald just a little bit.
Just a bit.
And I guess that's the reason they called it Bull Neck. And there was a livery stable on that. Not a livery stable, but the man that made the horse shoes, Mr. Brad, what did you call the
blacksmith?
Blacksmith, couldn't think of it.
Well, now, locating the Gilreath Champion Drugstore, the First National Bank, and you can look at the building now and tell it was once a bank, although it isn't now, is on the corner of Irwin and
Main Street, yeah.
And then what was next to the bank?
Next to the bank, we were right next to the bank, and then next to that was Jackson's Furniture Company.
And on down the block.
Knight's was on down the street.
Knight, which is still there.
And of course, they kept Gilreath Hardware there for a long time. And there was a bank down there, and there was a bank around the corner. And of course, Gilreath Hardware was there, and Young Brothers, which is still operate. They were there. Mr. Mack and Mr. Will ran it.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you in your early years, you lived with your grandmother for a time until your sister was born, and then moved out.
You moved out at 6 years old.
And so that we've already talked about that house at the corner of Bartow and right across the street from, right across Cherokee Avenue from Church of Ascension.
Yeah.
Growing up in Cartersville, I guess was you a typical young fellow? You had the same friends year after year after year?
Yes, we even knew people from Matco. We used to compete with boys from Matco. They'd have a football team and we'd have a football team, and we'd meet every Saturday and play, or a baseball or something like that. We always had just a great time. We knew everybody in town knew everybody. That was a great thing about it.
Now,
we just had a good time.
So your high school years were late 1930s, early 1940s?
Yeah, I graduated in the year 40.
Okay, so your high school, mostly 1930s, late 30s.
Wasn't too smart. I didn't graduate from college till 50.
Well, you had a little interim. We wanted to discuss that. You went in service.
I was in service for 3 years, almost to the day.
And when did you go in?
I went in 40 and stayed till 43.
Well, I'm not going to ask you your serial number, because you probably use that as the password for your computer.
No, I didn't either.
Oh, okay.
My serial number was 34687954.
Nobody forgets that number. What did you do in the service?
I worked with the engineers. I was in a topographic outfit. We made maps for beach landings, and we made some for the landing in Europe, the different landings in Europe when we were trying to learn. We could take aerial photographs and things like that and develop the topographic. And I wasn't in that. I was in the survey portion of it. I'd worked out here on the dam one summer with Ortel Monroe, working on the dam before they ever built it, while they were building the dam.
But now, while you were in service, didn't you serve in the Pacific?
I served 2.5 years in the Pacific.
Where were you?
We left the United States, and we were the first Liberty ship that went overseas without convoy. We had 2 props instead of 1. I didn't learn that. I didn't know that till we got out of service. And we went down to Finchhaven, New Guinea. And they sent me, my lieutenant wasn't real friendly with me. And he made me stay on the boat and clean the ship up so it could go by. And I got off the boat in the morning. It's right in the rainy season, and I got there. They said they got to where the camp was, and they said if everybody fall out and we have to do something. And they said we have to have 2 squads, and says these are the men that will compose the squad. Says first name they called was me. And we went on our first day, D-Day landing in 3 days after that.
So now, was this back in the European?
No, this was over in the South Pacific.
Okay.
MacArthur.
Was this with the invasion of Guadalcanal, or
no? This was about the time of Guadalcanal. MacArthur did a lot of island hopping, and up the coast of New Guinea, he would pick these islands, and we would invade them where there weren't many combat troops, Japanese combat troops. And we would take these little locations, and then they would just cut the Japs off and leave them there and cut off the supply from that air base. And we did that, I think I was on 3 D-days and one where we went in on the 2nd or 3rd way. We had very little combat, though, you know. We didn't do much combat because there weren't that many Japs there on those little islands.
Now, you came back to the United States after World War II. Where did you come back to?
We went all the way through to Japan.
Okay.
We went to the Philippines and worked on some bridges going up to Baguio. Mm-hmm. That was where they finally surrendered. The Japanese surrendered at Baguio, which was the summer capital of the Philippines.
But you actually worked on contingency maps to invade the Japanese home islands.
That's right.
Now, did you ever get to Japan?
I got to Japan. We went to Japan, and we got there just as it started the cold season. It was extremely cold. And, but we went back into some of the caves and things like that and picked up maps and stuff like that after we got there. I didn't stay there but about 8 weeks. And then we came home.
And the war had ended at that time?
The war had ended. We went our battalion went to a Japanese naval Air Corps base.
Did you ever know Admiral Fight?
No, I knew of Admiral Fight, but I never did personally know him.
That was an admiral of the United States Navy during World War II that was present on the aircraft carrier at the surrender. And, of course, Fight Street here is named for him, and the home is there. We're going to, now we've got you through World War II and back to when you came back to the United States, what next?
I went to work for my daddy, for my father. And we ran the drugstore till, I don't remember exactly what year we sold out.
Well, before we get to that area, I want to go back to the high school. And one particular thing someone wanted to be sure I ask you about 5 high school buddies who went to California with a Model T.
Oh, yeah. That was when we graduated from high school. We bought a touring Model T. And it was Calvin Floyd and, Chanel. Wait a minute, I'll think of it in a minute. And John Conyers and myself and David Jackson, and who am I leaving out? How many did I get?
You were one of the 5, so you just needed 4 more names. You had the first one was
David Jackson.
Right.
And John Conyers.
That's 3.
And Calvin Floyd.
That's 4 of you. And there was one more, you said? There were 5?
Chennault.
Chennault.
Robert Chennault.
Okay.
Robert Chennault.
Well, we got all those names. And a Model T Ford. How long did it take you to get from Cartersville to California?
We were gone the total time about 6 weeks. We stayed a week with Calvin Floyd's grandmother out on the West Coast, just outside of Hollywood. And we toured around in the area. And we left here, and every night we went to Shreveport and spent a night with some of David Jackson's. I hadn't named David, had I?
Yes, you had.
They had a, and people, and then we went on out to California. We had AAA made us a map of where to go. They mapped the whole tour, and we went the southern route and then came back the northern route through Chicago. And we were gone for 6 weeks, and we slept in a motel except when we slept with the families. Every night we'd get a motel room with 2 beds, 2 double beds, and we'd match to see who slept on the floor. And I didn't have to sleep on the floor till we got the last night. And we just had a glorious time, and when I got back and we sold the car, Robert Chenow's, Robert Chenow's father was a trucker. You remember him?
I remember Rob Chenal, yes.
And he and his brother had a hauling company that hauled around construction stuff. And they lived up at White, and let's see, where was I going with this story? And when we got back, I had spent $65 for 6 weeks.
Well, Thomas, that's about what your budget is now, isn't it?
That's about what my budget is now.
Now we've got you. Tell us any other stories about your high school experiences. I know you went with quite a crew with Jimmy Shaw, Evan Strickland, and Judge White.
Judge White, and John Conyers, and I was trying to remember who else that was there that people might still know. There was Max Jones. His father was a lawyer, and Nelson, Joe Nelson.
Well,
his father was postmaster at that time, and we played football with boys out at ACCO and baseball and things like that, and we just knew everybody in town. We played the east side and the west side. Of course, the railroad went right down the middle of the road, and that separated everybody. And we played downtown, and we just had a glorious time.
So when you got out of the Army, were you already a pharmacist? Or
No, I did. I went to farm school, drove back and forth, and every day for 4 years.
So you started working right after World War II.
Yeah,
You started at Champion. It was then Gilreath Champion.
In 46.
Was now Mr. Gilreath active in the business at that time?
No, he never was active in the business up there when he closed his store.
Oh, okay.
He never did go back to doing the pharmacy.
So your father had the store. It was a drugstore, and aside from pharmaceuticals and the usual things that drugstores supply, you had pretty famous soda fountain.
Yeah, we had a great time. The drugstore was great. Everybody met for coffee. And then we had a group came in after lunch every day, and back around a pot-bellied stove in the back, they played checkers. Now, they even had some of the national champions come by here just to play checkers with some of them.
Now, your daddy played checkers, didn't he?
No, my dad didn't play checkers. He wouldn't have anything to do with checkers. He loved gin rummy, but he would never play checkers.
Well, now, Turley Warlick, I know, was a car dealer. He was in those checkers.
Turley Warlick was in that crowd, and Joe Nelson, and there were several other farmers. There was a ponder, and I can't remember.
Any of the Smiths get involved?
No. Let's see.
But that was the period right after World War II.
Yeah, that was right after World War II.
And the drugstore remained in that location till close to the
70s. It was up in the 70s.
Okay.
Because I worked 10 years with the state.
Well, you worked, but now your drugstore you moved up next to the Big Apple supermarket.
We moved. The bank bought out the Nelson building. Bought out the building. It belonged to Mr. Carl Nelson. And the Nelson brothers from out around U Harley, they had Nelson Furniture Company. And they built the building up next to where the police station is now. The Owen Funeral Home built that building at that time. We were next door to that.
It's a new shopping area now that's just getting underway.
Across from Presbyterian Church.
And you had the drugstore up there, but you still had the coffee in the back?
Still had the coffee in the back.
Only thing is you didn't charge.
That was a bad thing we could have made. If we had all that money, we'd be sitting pretty. If we'd had that money and invested it, we'd been sitting pretty.
I'm going to test my memory. As I recall, at one time y'all offered curb service at the drugstore.
Oh, yes. And we'd, on Sunday afternoon, they'd be parked all the way down to Young Brothers.
And come the wait person would come outside with a tray that would hook on the glass,
Yes, sir.
the automobile, and against the side of the car.
And it was a metal front and had metal columns similar to what was up and down the street. And there was a little flat area there, and we had seed buckets. We sold seed for people to plant in gardens and things like that. And at night we would sit out there in front of that because we didn't have any business, but we stayed open just in case somebody came by. And I'll never will forget one of the funniest things that ever happened down there. I was sitting there, and this cat came around the corner. And that cat was, boy, he was really flying. And right behind him was a great big old wharf rat. But he had come out of the train station down there, the building station. There were big rats under there, just tremendous rats. And that rat was chasing that cat. And the last thing I saw, he was going between two buildings on them down by night. But I believe it was between nights and long. And it was they weren't completely closed, and it's about that wide, and that cat and that rat chasing him.
That's not the normal order of things. It's not what's supposed to be.
No.
Well, the drugstore in the late 60s was when I believe Mr. Nelson, the bank bought the building.
Yeah.
So, and it moved on. And of course, we have a picture of the, I think this is the last week of the last day.
Yeah, last time we served coffee.
And sitting right in the front of the coffee club is your father, Mr. Tom Knight.
And Tom Champion.
Tom Champion. What am I thinking? Well, I was already over to Fred Knight's picture right there in the middle of it, and Jimmy Dellinger sitting next to your father, Lamar Hill behind Jimmy, and standing up is Joe Nelson. We've talked about him before, next to the Shaw that owned the Economy Autos. What was his first name? Robert.
Robert Shaw.
Robert Shaw, and a lot of other, Rufus Jones.
Robert was raised in our neighborhood too.
Oh, okay.
Up on top of the hill next to the.
And Boyd Pettit's father Hugh is in the picture, and Judge White. And I see Alphabet Collins.
Alphabet Collins.
Tell us about Alphabet.
Alphabet came here with the research department of the University of Georgia, and for some reason he would come up here and he got the city and the county bought him a place up near, well, it's where the college is now.
On Highway 20.
Yeah.
It's called it's Genetics Farm.
Genetic Farm, and they did research on things like cottonseed, trying to produce more. They did different experiments.
Make better seed.
Yeah, make better seed.
And that was his job. Why was he known as Alphabet?
You know, I don't remember. I bet you do, though.
I do. He was M.W.H. Collins.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody called him. Everybody in Cartersville had a nickname.
Yes, they did.
Now, your nickname is best known. You were known as Momo.
Momo.
How did you get the name Momo?
John Cochran tells us a tale that somebody asked my daddy how could he put up with me? He said, really, he's just more than I can put up with. And it evolved around to Momo.
Said when you got here, he wasn't going to be no mo.
That's right. And that was how that's where John Cochran's house, one of my best friends who was just turned 90.
Well, in addition to running a drugstore, you were active in the civic community.
Yeah.
What were the things that you like to do on behalf of the community?
I was president of the Rotary Club one year, and I was very active soon after I got out of the Army in the Boy Scouts. And I was more in the executive part of it here, and chairman of Bartow County,